Hey everyone, thanks for joining and welcome to our session, Mind the Gap, from Cyber Threat Intelligence to Defensive Improvements with Community Resources. My name is Scott Small. I'm Director of Cyber Threat Intelligence at Tidal Cyber. I've spent my entire career in intelligence research and analysis, and in my role, a big focus of what I do is providing cyber threat intelligence content within our community edition platform, which Ian and I will be walking through in quite a bit of detail here in our session today. So Ian, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Scott. So my name is Ian Davila. I'm a lead adversary emulation engineer here at Tidal Cyber. So my background is in mostly MITRE attack. I spent some years in MITRE doing technical research, leading efforts for that side of the house, and also helping out with the attack evaluations team, so researching and implementing TTPs.
Awesome. So real quick agenda for today, a couple super high level takeaways. I want to emphasize that everything we want to be speaking about today is designed to be highly practical, and especially for those of you who are just starting your journey around cyber threat profiling and tracking adversaries and techniques, this content is definitely designed for you. So we're going to kick off the discussion with a quick look at how to narrow down threats using, as I mentioned, our freely available Tidal Cyber Community Edition. And then next, we're going to highlight, once you've done that, how you can identify some potential overlaps in the threat techniques that are appearing within the matrix view, and potentially identify some gaps between those threat techniques and defenses that might exist within your defensive technology stack. And finally, we'll show you how you can actually expand your knowledge base by using what we call technique sets to capture important, relevant information from recent cyber threat intelligence reporting, and even giving you an opportunity to start digging in down to the procedural level. Great. So at a high level, I want to demonstrate all of the amazing resources that are accessible within Tidal's Community Edition. From the threat intelligence side, we, of course, as a core of the platform, we have MITRE ATT&CK knowledge base that is easily surfaceable within the platform. We also, however, provide a lot of Tidal-specific enrichments. So we'll be walking through this in a demonstration, things like metadata around adversary groups. So what attribution and countries are some of them associated with, as well as things like what are their motivations and what are the countries or industries associated with their various victims. And then I'm really excited to showcase some of the Tidal Community Spotlight content. So this is a great repository for all of the information and intelligence that we're working on and visualizing within our community platform, making that easily accessible to anyone who wants to access Community Edition, as well as even showcasing some technique sets and intelligence that's been created and visualized by members of our user community. Ian?
Yeah, thanks, Scott. So as Scott mentioned, we do have the attack data, right? So that's like on the threat side, we have those mappings. So the big question is, so what do we do on the defensive side? How do we know that we can detect, protect, respond, mitigate, or test against this specific threat behaviors, right? So to answer that question, we have created the Tidal Product Registry. So basically, the Tidal Product Registry is a place where you can go to find security products and see how they detect, protect, respond, mitigate, or test against all the behaviors. And additionally, we've included analytics. So basically, analytics are rules that can be implemented by your defensive solution to detect or protect against these behaviors. So this empowers users to understand and easily find where there are overlaps between threats and defenses, but also gaps. So gaps are locations in your defense stack that you're lacking visibility or defensive capabilities. So basically, combining these two, we're able to find those specific use cases and gaps. So let's break that down. I really like this simple slide here. So basically, we have the threats on the side. So basically, groups, software that implement behaviors. As we just mentioned, so the behaviors are mapped to attack. So the commonly known as TTPs. And now we can map those TTPs into the defenses. So that means that we know how the defenses can protect against these behaviors. The very useful feature here is that we can find gaps. We're going to showcase how we can leverage the Tidal Community Edition to do that. So we're going to jump into the Tidal Community Edition soon here. Super quickly, the first scenario, I'll be showcasing how to narrow down threats. And the second scenario, Scott will be taking over how to expand your knowledge base. So let's jump over to app.tidalcyber.com really quickly here. So this is what you get when you first go to the Tidal's Community Edition. So you get the matrix, as you already are familiar with attack. So you have the tactics, left to right, and the techniques. If you go to the hamburger menu on the top left, you'll notice that there's a ton of useful information. So the first one is our product registry. The product registry, it has a list of vendors and products and their capabilities of how they test, mitigate, protect, and detect. So if, for example, you can filter down really quickly and see all the products and vendors that implement testing capabilities. So that'll be really useful if you're trying to test against a specific behavior. So quickly going down the list, we have the community spotlight that Scott is gonna showcase later. We have tactics, techniques, groups, campaigns, software, data sources, analytics. So the rules, we currently have Sigma rules for those who are familiar with Sigma. And we also have references. So references are the open CTI that you can get to from our platform as well. So let's jump into groups. So I really like this page because if you're starting off with threat-informed defense, it could be overwhelming. Like, as you notice, like the matrix is very large. And we've added some metadata fields, as described earlier, to showcase how from a very large set of groups. So you can filter that down, right? So if you're an organization and you care about groups that may target your resources, your financial resources, you're focused on groups that are motivated by getting financial gain out of operations, right? For example, you can also filter down by suspected attribution, but in this case, I'm not going to. We also have sectors, which I think is something really valuable, and basically it helps a lot into filtering down, again, those groups. So let's say our organization is a financial services organization. So I'm going to click on that. So far, we have groups that are focusing on financial gain and target financial services. And again, you can also filter down even more. So right now we're at 13, but you can continue to filter down and saying that your organization focuses on the United States and UK. That'll give us a shorter set of groups to focus on. So now that we have like a nice set of groups that we can start off our research on, we can start off and add that to our matrix, and I'll show you what that means. So let's add a couple of groups just for demonstration purposes. So at the top, you'll see this nice label bar that's going to be persistent across your research process. So basically, you'll get that across any single page that you're navigating to. So if you go to the title button here, you'll see the matrix now overlaid with all the groups and their techniques. So for example, we have APT38, and we have this technique, which is basically labeled in green. That means that APT38 has been observed to be leveraging this technique. And we can filter down even more by clicking on show only label techniques. So that basically helps us lowering our scope even more. So getting really focused on what we're trying to get at. So these are techniques that have been observed to be used by this 6 groups. So we started off with a very large matrix, and we slowly are getting, we're like lowering the amount of techniques that we have to focus on, right? Another like really neat feature that I wanted to showcase here is the ability to research like techniques on the spot. So if you click on a technique, you'll get information such as the description of the technique. You'll get the product registry information. So you'll see like the vendors who implement test, detect, protect, or mitigate capabilities in this case. So if you click on test, for example, you'll get the set of vendors that have capabilities for this specific technique. And you can also see here all the groups that are leveraging that specific technique. So you can do that across all the techniques here. So for example, you can click on this persistent technique, raise your run key, start a folder sub technique. And let's say, for example, I want to go and detect. I have Olaf Hartong, so he's the person who created Sysmon Modular. So if you have this freely available detection solution, you can go ahead and even add it to your matrix as well. But you can focus at the capabilities that are specific for this technique. So you can click on a specific capability, and we also include the ability to jump into the actual like GitHub detection. So if you're interested in researching that detection, you can also click on that and go outside of the platform and get to GitHub basically. For example, if you want to go to a specific group and research more about the specific group, you can do. We have all the available information from MITRE attack, and you can dive into the procedures if you're interested. So before I move on to the scenario, I'm just running out of time here. But the last thing I wanted to showcase is once you create an account, you can, for free, basically, you can create and save your state. So basically, say we're researching this specific like set of groups. I'm gonna like save that threats February 2023. So that way, whenever I come back to the platform, I can easily find this matrix and get back to where I was researching. So that is a lot of features I want to cover. I'm gonna pass it over to Scott. So I'm gonna stop sharing really quickly here, and Scott can take it over.
Awesome. So as I get my screen pulled up, Ian did a great job of showing how you can use the existing information from the attack knowledge base and start to filter that down and make it a lot more relevant for your own organization. But what if there are other threats that you might want to visualize and take some defensive action around in exactly the same way? As I mentioned, I'm coming in with a background in intelligence research and analysis, and I know that every single day, numerous technical reports and research reports are being put out around the latest threats. And there's a lot more information that we could potentially be utilizing and capitalizing on. So I'm going to start in a familiar place with my part of the walkthrough. I've got an example report here, great, excellent deep dive into what's known as Aurora Stealer by the Sequoia.io research team. This is a credential and information stealing malware. A number of these types of threats, we've been doing some pretty deep research ourselves into the overall information stealer landscape. And a lot of various variants have been popping up over even just the past few months alone. So as I scroll down, just again to demonstrate a lot of great detail within this report. What if we want to visualize some of the techniques and other TTPs associated with a threat like this? So we could come into the software menu and we could try to take a look for Aurora. No examples here. What about just information stealers in general? If this is a type of malware that's on our radar, we can see that in the attack knowledge base, we have a couple of information stealers here, but I can tell you that both of these are a little bit older and not extremely active in recent times. But again, what if we want to make use of the great intelligence in a report like this? One thing that I want to point out real quick, and I can note that a lot of recent CTI reporting are containing mappings like this. The Sequoia.io team has already gone ahead and kind of parsed out all those great details contained in the body of the report and summarized them down in a nice table here with the MITRE attack technique identifiers contained within it. This can be extremely useful for helping us visualize the information in Tidal's Community Edition by what I like to do. The quickest way is I throw those details, those technique identifiers into a CSV. I use a quick Python script produced by the MITRE attack team to turn this information into what's known as an attack navigator layer file. It's a JSON file. And what we can do with this, there's a couple ways to start visualizing this in Tidal's platform. If you want to, let me pull up Start from Scratch here. If you want to start creating what we call a technique set in our platform, you have two easy ways of doing that. Using the ribbon, the plus sign at the top of the screen, you can choose technique set here. And if I choose this option to create a new technique set, I can start to build one of these sets from scratch. I can add in individually all of these technique identifiers, and they'll start to populate in my set. And ultimately, we can visualize this within the matrix view. What I like to do when I create that navigator layer file is when you're logged in, you can choose the option to just directly import an attack navigator JSON file, and it will pretty much instantly pop up with the view that you're seeing right now. I've already gone ahead and done this. We have provided a few walkthroughs through this entire process using the Learn More option in the navigation menu on the left-hand side. So ultimately, we've gone very quickly from a cyber threat intelligence report that isn't currently captured in the knowledge base into one of these Tidal technique sets. A couple things I'll highlight right off the top here. As Ian showed, I almost always like to filter down my matrix using the show only labeled techniques. And now we've got this great tightened up visual of the techniques associated with Aurora Stealer from the recent CTI report. One other thing that I'll highlight here, and that we're doing this with a lot of the community spotlight content that we're sharing out with our user community, is when you click on the label and the ribbon at the top, you can get a lot of these additional details that you can choose to populate associated with your technique set. So I typically give a quick description around this threat, so I don't always have to come back to the source reporting. But along with that reporting, I often like to include the source URLs for all of the discrete techniques contained within the report as individual notes appended to each of the techniques within my set. So it's a quick and easy way for me to remember. In this example, I've pre-populated. I have sourcing from actually multiple different sources that we're touching on Aurora Steeler recently. One of the final pieces for ourselves when we have bandwidth, and definitely for you when you're doing your deep dive research and you want to keep track of the great details in these reports, I like to also often include some of the procedural details within these notes. So I have a quick reference of maybe how specifically was a given technique utilized by a given threat out there in the wild. So I've shown this one single example of essentially extending your knowledge base by creating technique sets. But what if we want to kind of scale up this type of view? So I mentioned previously, as we're seeing here, there's not a ton of information stealer intelligence within the attack knowledge base at this time. What I'll start to do is point you all over to, again, our community spotlight. And this is the area where we ourselves at Tidal, as well as our community users, are able to share some of the great work they're doing in creating these technique sets, or actually clusters of technique sets that we call matrices or matrix lists. So as I scroll down, you can see that we've really been producing a lot of this CTI content over the past few months alone. And then we get down to what we call our matrix lists, which are simply collections of technique sets or other existing threat objects from the MITRE attack knowledge base. You have the option to add either or of those options into your overall matrix. And what I'll point you all to in the theme of information stealers is our major and emerging info stealers matrix. What this is composed of, you're visualizing it now. We have added 20 unique credential and information stealer variants all to this matrix, and we're continuing to keep this updated. As I mentioned, many new variants are coming out truly every few weeks kind of at this point. This is a very much kind of top of mind threat these days. So we've got all 20 of the info stealers in the ribbon at the top. And where this becomes really powerful, this matrix view, it really is more than just a pretty picture. We can start to instantly visualize where there might be overlapping use of certain threat techniques. And you can see that with the labels individually underlined in each of the little technique cells here. And the one that I especially want to point to, we've done a lot of recent research around this. I'll note this dark circle that's also over the technique cell. This is highlighting that there are 19 of the overall 20 labels within my matrix that are associated with this single technique. So almost all of the info stealers in this assessment are using this one technique. So this is a really good prompt that maybe we might want to dig in and learn a little bit more about how this technique works, and maybe use that to kind of prioritize which sources we pivot back into to learn more of those procedural details about how the technique is actually being implemented out in the wild. So one final piece that I want to note when I was doing my own research into this overall info stealer landscape, this technique again really stood out to me because of how frequently it was associated with all those various threats. I also noticed that there were potentially some mismatches or gaps between some of the various resources that we are combining all and making easily accessible within the community edition. So as Ian mentioned, you can see here that at the time of doing this research, there was a single Sigma analytic associated with this threat technique. But what I also did is I started to click in further. So if we go to view details, we can see the full technique details around this. We can see our one Sigma analytic here. I'll pivot in just a moment. What I also noticed is that when we looked at the open source Red Canary Atomic Red Team project, I'll highlight this here. All associated just with this single Steal web session cookie technique, there were 2 Atomic Red Team tests associated with this technique. As we can see, they're designed to recognize accessing cookies within 2 major web browsers. I'll go ahead and click in so you can see some of the details of these tests. This is the actual Atomic Red Team repo. The first example is looking at accessing Firefox cookies specifically. When I did some additional pivoting within Tidal's Community Edition, I ultimately landed on, at the time, the single sigma analytic that was also aligned with that technique. And what we can see here, we can dig into the details. It's using a SQLite binary to access the cookies.sqlite Firefox cookies folder that is saved locally on your machine if you are saving cookies when you're doing web browsing. What I actually coincidentally noticed is that the references in this Sigma rule actually point directly back to this atomic red team test that I was highlighting previously. We have one for Steal Firefox cookies. We also have the Chrome variant of this test, but there's no associated Sigma rule for that. And that was potentially just whenever folks were working on creating these, they just maybe didn't have a chance to create an alternative version for Chrome. And so that's actually exactly what I did. I used the existing template of the Firefox version of this Sigma rule, and I just made the equivalent modifications to it based largely around the existing atomic red team test for Chrome. So I'm not super experienced in creating Sigma rules, but using all of these publicly available resources, it was actually very quick for me to be able to format a new Sigma rule. And I ultimately committed that back to the Sigma repository, and now it lives here for others to be able to take access and take advantage of. So I was proud of, to make a little bit of a concrete improvement, write a new Sigma rule, all based around these recent, very popular threat techniques that we were able to surface through visualizing and aggregating intelligence within Tidal's Community Edition. So that will bring us to a close of our walkthrough. Really appreciate everyone joining, and we hope to see you out there utilizing the Community Edition. Go to app.tidalcyber.com to be able to start taking advantage of this. If you have any questions, if you're interested in contributing some of your own technique sets back to the community, please let us know, engage. We're on LinkedIn, Twitter, most major social platforms. And we'll really look forward to engaging with you all out there in the community. So thanks again for the time.